Jax's revenge domain.
They said I was just the help. Turned out I was the foundation holding up their whole empire. My name's James Henderson. People call me Mac. I'm 49 years old, and for 28 years I've been the backbone of Sullivan Brothers Construction here in Buffalo. Started when I was 21, fresh out of trade school. Grateful as hell that Bill Sullivan took a chance on a foster kid nobody else wanted. The meeting that changed everything happened on a Tuesday morning in November. Bill called it a strategic planning session. But I knew something was off when I walked into the conference room and saw his wife Patricia sitting there with that smug look she gets when she's about to drop a bomb. Bill cleared his throat. Mac, you've been like a son to me, 28 years, and you've helped build this company from a crew of 6 guys to 120 employees. I adjusted my hard hat on the table. Something about the way he said, like a son, made my stomach tighten. In construction, when someone starts with compliments, bad news follows. But Patricia and I have been talking about succession planning. We're not getting any younger. Here it comes, I thought. Finally. After all these years of running operations, managing the crews, building our reputation project by project, I was going to get what Bill promised me back in '98. The company would be mine. We've decided Brandon should take over as CEO when I retire. The air conditioning unit kicked on. That's the only sound I remember from the next 10 seconds. Brandon, his 31-year-old son who'd worked maybe 18 months total on actual job sites before running off to Stanford for his MBA. The kid who referred to our crews as human resources and thought a load-bearing wall was some kind of financial term. Mac will continue as COO, of course, Patricia added, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Brandon will need experienced support during the transition. I ran my thumb along the edge of my hard hat. The plastic was worn smooth from years of handling. What transition timeline are we looking at? Brandon starts next Monday, Bill said. He's got some fresh ideas about modernizing operations. Fresh ideas, right? I'd seen his fresh ideas during his summer internships, cutting safety protocols to save time, hiring the lowest bidders regardless of quality, treating the guys like they were disposable. The succession plan we discussed in '98, I said carefully. The one where you said loyalty and competence would determine the future of Sullivan Brothers. Bill wouldn't meet my eyes. Things change, Mac. Family considerations have to come first. Family considerations. 28 years of 60-hour weeks, missed holidays, and building this company from a small-time operation into Buffalo's premier commercial contractor, and I was still the outsider looking in. The foster kid who never really belonged. I stood up. I understand completely, and I did. I understood that blood trumped merit, that 28 years of loyalty meant nothing when real family came calling, and that every promise Bill had made about my future was just words to keep the help motivated. Great, Patricia beamed. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. Reasonable, sure. I was going to be very reasonable. Brandon started Monday morning with a company-wide email about optimizing operational efficiency. By Tuesday, he was questioning why we had 2 safety inspectors when other companies got by with 1. Wednesday, he wanted to know why we were paying union wages when we could hire cheaper, non-union crews. I sat in my office watching him through the glass partition as he explained to Eddie Romano, our best foreman, why the guys didn't need 15-minute breaks every 2 hours. Eddie's face was getting redder by the minute, which meant Brandon was about 30 seconds away from learning what a construction worker's vocabulary really sounds like. My computer screen showed our project management dashboard, 23 active job sites from small renovations to the $12 million Buffalo General Hospital expansion we'd been working on for 8 months. Every timeline, every subcontractor schedule, every safety protocol, every inspector relationship that kept those projects running smoothly went through systems I'd built. Brandon knocked on my door. Mac, got a minute. I minimized the dashboard. What's up? I've been reviewing our project management software. Looks like it's pretty customized. Did we pay a lot for this system? I almost laughed. No external costs. I built it myself. You built it. When nights and weekends. Started about 6 years ago when our old system kept crashing. Took me 2 years to get all the integrations working with the city permit database and the union scheduling system. Brandon nodded like he understood what that meant. Great. Can you show me how it works? I want to streamline some of these processes. For the next hour, I walked him through the system, how it automatically generated safety reports for OSHA, how it tracked material deliveries to prevent theft, how it managed the complex dance of coordinating 8 different trades on a major project without anyone stepping on anyone else's work. This is pretty sophisticated, Brandon admitted, but it seems overly complicated. Can't we just use something simpler? You could try, I said. But this system talks to 47 different databases, the city permit office, the union hall, our major suppliers, the inspection departments. It knows which inspector prefers morning visits versus afternoon, Which suppliers give us the best deals on rush orders, which subcontractors are reliable versus which ones need constant oversight. Right, but there's got to be off-the-shelf software that does this stuff. I adjusted my hard hat on the desk. Maybe you'd have to rebuild all the relationships manually. How hard could it be? The question hung in the air like concrete dust. How hard could it be? Only someone who'd never actually run a construction project would ask that. Not hard at all, I said. You should definitely look into it. That afternoon, I went home and made myself a decision. Bill wanted me to be reasonable. I'd be the most reasonable employee Sullivan Brothers ever had. I'd do exactly what my job description said, nothing more, nothing less. I pulled out my employment contract and read it for the first time in probably 15 years. Chief Operating Officer responsible for daily operations oversight, safety compliance reporting, and administrative coordination with project managers. Notice what it didn't say. It didn't say anything about maintaining custom software systems. It didn't mention managing relationships with city inspectors who could shut down a project with a single violation notice. It didn't include the midnight phone calls when equipment broke down or the weekend trips to smooth things over when a subcontractor screwed up. All those things I'd been doing for 28 years, those were extra personal contributions from someone who thought he was family. I opened my laptop and navigated to the Project Management Systems admin panel. Every night for 6 years, I'd run a maintenance routine that kept the whole thing functioning. Database cleanup, backup verification, integration testing, with city systems that changed their protocols monthly. I disabled the automated maintenance schedule. Not dramatic, just clicked a button. The system would keep running for maybe 2 weeks before the accumulated errors started causing problems. Then I went through my phone and deleted the personal numbers for Tony Marconi at the permit office, Jim Walsh at Local 13-4, and Angela Torres, the toughest safety inspector in Buffalo. These weren't company contacts. These were relationships I'd built through years of Christmas cards, remembering their kids' names and solving their problems when they needed favors. Brandon wanted to streamline operations. He could figure out how to get a permit approved when the city computer system went down and you needed to call someone who knew where the backup paper forms were stored. The first crack in the facade appeared Thursday morning. Eddie Romano stormed into Brandon's office carrying a clipboard thick with violation notices. Your boy Wonder just cost us 3 days on the Mercy Hospital job, Eddie announced loud enough for half the office to hear. Inspector Torres red-tagged the electrical work because Brandon told the electricians they could work without a journeyman supervisor. Through my office window, I watched Brandon's face go pale, but I checked the regulations. Apprentices can work unsupervised if they're in their 4th year. Not on hospital electrical systems, they can't, Eddie growled. Hospital work requires a master electrician to sign off on every circuit, but Mac would have known that. All eyes turned to me. I was reading email, reviewing safety reports, doing exactly what my job description required. Mac, Brandon called out. Can you call Inspector Torres and straighten this out? I looked up from my computer. I don't have Inspector Torres's contact information. You'll need to go through the official channels. Official channels meant calling the main city number, getting transferred 6 times, and eventually being told that Inspector Torres would get back to you when she got back to you. Brandon's jaw tightened. But you've dealt with her before, right? In my previous capacity, yes, but you wanted to streamline operations. Going through proper channels is more efficient than personal relationships. The second crack came Monday morning. Our concrete supplier, Lakeside Materials, called to say they were suspending our account due to payment irregularities. Brandon panicked. What payment irregularities? We pay all our bills on time. I pulled up the accounting system. Shows here that last Friday's payment was rejected. Insufficient funds. That's impossible. We have plenty of cash flow. According to this, you authorized a $127,000 payment to Premium Building Supply on Friday afternoon. That put us over our daily wire transfer limit. Brandon stared at the screen. Premium Building Supply? I've never heard of them. I handed him the invoice. You approved it Thursday. New supplier, better prices, you said. He studied the paperwork. This is for materials we haven't ordered yet. And the address. He squinted. This is in Alabama. Why are we paying a supplier in Alabama? I don't know. I said honestly, I just process the payments you approve. What Brandon didn't know was that I'd spotted the fraudulent invoice immediately. In the old days, I would have called him, explained the scam, and handled it quietly. But that was when I thought I was family. Now I was just following orders. It took 3 days to unravel the payment mess. 3 days when Lakeside Materials wouldn't deliver concrete. 3 days when the Buffalo General Hospital Foundation pour had to be postponed. 3 days of $15,000 per day delay penalties that came straight out of our profit margin. By the 3rd week, Brandon was looking haggard. The hospital project was behind schedule. We had safety violations on 2 other job sites. And our insurance company was asking uncomfortable questions about our recent spike in incident reports. Mac, he cornered me by the coffee machine. I need your help here. Things are getting out of hand. I poured coffee into my cup, feeling the heat through the ceramic. What kind of help the old way? The way you used to handle things? Can't you just, make some calls? I took a sip of coffee. Which calls specifically? Inspector Torres. She's been nitpicking every little thing on the Mercy job. In the past, you always worked something out with her. Inspector Torres is doing her job, I said. If there are safety violations, they need to be corrected according to code. But some of these violations are barely violations. The spacing on the guardrails is off by 2 inches. The temporary electrical panel is 3 feet from where it should be instead of 4 feet. This is the kind of stuff you used to smooth over. I adjusted my hard hat. I used to do a lot of things differently. Brandon's face flushed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm following the organizational structure you and your father established. You're the CEO. You handle strategic relationships. I handle administrative tasks. The breaking point came on a Wednesday morning in December. I was in my office reviewing safety reports when I heard shouting from the main floor. Through my window, I could see Brandon arguing with a man in a hard hat I didn't recognize. Eddie Romano knocked on my door. Mac, you better get out here. This is about to get ugly. The stranger was Dan Murphy, project supervisor for the Buffalo General Hospital expansion. His face was red, and he was waving a stack of papers at Brandon. Shut down, Brandon was saying. You can't just shut down a $12 million project. I can, and I am. Murphy shot back. OSHA found 17 safety violations during yesterday's inspection. 17. Guardrails missing, electrical boxes uncovered, workers without proper fall protection gear. This job site is a lawsuit waiting to happen. I'd seen the OSHA report that morning. It was brutal. Every corner cut, every safety protocol Brandon had streamlined, every shortcut he'd approved to save money had come back to bite us. Missing handrails on the 3rd floor scaffolding. Electrical panels left open in wet areas. Workers using damaged safety harnesses that should have been replaced months ago. This is temporary, Brandon pleaded. We can fix these issues in a couple days. A couple days? Murphy laughed bitterly. Son, this isn't about fixing a few guardrails. This is about a pattern of negligence. OSHA is launching a formal investigation. Until that's complete, this site stays locked down. Eddie stepped forward. Dan, maybe we could work something out. You know Mac Henderson, right? He's been point man on hospital projects for years. Murphy looked at me. We'd worked together on 4 major hospital projects over the past decade. I'd kept him out of trouble more than once when city inspectors got overzealous or when scheduling conflicts threatened to derail deadlines. He knew I understood the complexity of hospital construction, the special requirements for medical gas lines, the backup power systems, the infection control protocols. Mac, Murphy nodded. Didn't know you were still with Sullivan Brothers, still here, I said. He waited for me to say more. In the old days, I would have jumped in with a solution. Suggested a timeline for corrections, offered to personally oversee the remediation, maybe invited him to lunch to discuss how we could prevent similar issues in the future. Instead, I just stood there. Well, Murphy said, finally, maybe you can talk some sense into your people. This kind of safety record doesn't just hurt Sullivan Brothers. It makes all of us look bad. I'm sure Brandon will handle it appropriately, I said. The silence stretched out until Murphy shook his head and walked away. That afternoon, Bill Sullivan Sr. called an emergency meeting. He looked older than his 72 years, the stress of the past month showing in the lines around his eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he shuffled through the papers on the table. We're in serious trouble, he started without preamble. The hospital shutdown is costing us $45,000 a day in penalties. Our insurance company is threatening to drop us. 3 other clients are talking about canceling their contracts. Patricia sat beside him, no longer smug. Her usual confident demeanor had cracked, replaced by the worried look of someone watching a lifetime of work crumble. Brandon's been working around the clock to fix this situation, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Brandon looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His normally perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled. The OSHA investigation should wrap up soon. Once we clear that hurdle, we can get back to normal operations. Normal operations, Bill's voice cracked. Son, we're hemorrhaging money. At this rate, we'll be bankrupt by Easter. It's not that bad, Brandon protested. These are just temporary setbacks. Every construction company deals with safety violations, not 17 violations on a single site, Bill said. Not with OSHA threatening criminal charges if someone gets hurt. Criminal charges, that was new. I pulled out my folder and checked the OSHA report again. There it was, buried in the technical language. Willful disregard for worker safety protocols may result in criminal prosecution under Section 666E of the Occupational Safety and Health Act. Bill turned to me. Mac, what's your assessment? I opened my folder and pulled out a spreadsheet I'd prepared that morning. Current daily burn rate is $73,000. Outstanding penalties total $340,000 and climbing. If the OSHA investigation takes another month, we're looking at potential losses exceeding $2.8 million. The room went quiet except for the hum of the heater. $2.8 million, Bill repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. That's assuming no additional safety incidents or project delays, I added. If OSHA decides to expand their investigation to our other active sites, we could be looking at a complete work stoppage across all projects. Bill rubbed his forehead. How do we stop the bleeding? Brandon leaned forward eagerly. I've been working on a recovery plan. We can renegotiate some of the penalty clauses, maybe bring in temporary safety consultants to speed up the OSHA clearance process. Temporary consultants cost money we don't have, Bill said, and they don't have relationships with the local inspectors. We need solutions that work with existing resources. Brandon looked at me expectantly. In the past, this would have been my cue to pull out my phone, start making calls, work my network of contacts to find a path forward. I would have called Angela Torres directly, explained the situation, maybe offered to have her personally oversee the remediation process. I would have reached out to Dan Murphy, reminded him of the favors I'd done over the years, asked for a little flexibility on the timeline. I stayed silent. Mac? Bill prompted. You've gotten us through tough spots before. The weight of 28 years sat heavy in the room. All those times I'd worked weekends to solve problems. All those relationships I'd built over late-night dinners and early morning coffee meetings, all those favors I'd called in to keep Sullivan Brothers running smoothly. The current situation is outside my administrative purview, I said. Strategic crisis management falls under executive leadership. Bill stared at me like I'd slapped him. 28 years of working together, and he was finally seeing what I'd been trying to tell him for weeks. I wasn't family. I was just an employee, and employees do their jobs, nothing more. What would it take? He asked quietly. For what? For you to handle this the way you used to handle things. I adjusted my hard hat on the table. I'm not sure what you mean, the calls, Mac, the relationships. The way you used to smooth over problems before they became disasters. Those weren't part of my official duties, I said. Those were personal favors I did because I thought we were family. The word hung in the air like sawdust. Patricia cleared her throat. Mac, you know we've always considered you family. No, I said calmly. You considered me useful. There's a difference. Bill's shoulders sagged. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked every one of his 72 years. What do you want? It was the question I'd been waiting 28 years to hear. Recognition, I said. Financial compensation for the systems I built and maintained on my own time. Ownership stake reflecting my actual contribution to this company's success. Brandon started to protest, but Bill held up a hand. How much? Bill asked. I slid a folder across the table. My attorney prepared this analysis. The project management system I built has saved Sullivan Brothers approximately $2.3 million over 6 years through improved efficiency and reduced delays. Conservative licensing fee for comparable commercial software would be $180,000 plus $18,000 monthly for maintenance and updates. Bill opened the folder and read silently. As for ongoing involvement, I continued, I'm prepared to offer consulting services at market rate. But I won't be an employee anymore. I'll be a vendor. Consulting services, Patricia repeated skeptically. 20 years of relationships with inspectors, suppliers, and city officials. Knowledge of every major project pitfall specific to Buffalo construction. Expertise that took 3 decades to develop and can't be replaced by hiring MBA graduates. Brandon finally found his voice. This is extortion. This is capitalism, I corrected. Supply and demand, I have something you need, and you're finally realizing how much it's worth. Bill closed the folder. If we agree to these terms, can you fix the hospital situation? I can have Inspector Torres on site tomorrow morning for a preliminary walkthrough. I can get Dan Murphy to agree to a phased reopening plan. I can probably get OSHA to expedite their review in exchange for implementing enhanced safety protocols across all our projects.
How?
I smiled for the first time in weeks by making some phone calls. 3 days later, I was standing in my new home office, looking out at Chestnut Lake. The house wasn't huge, but it had something Bill Sullivan had dreamed about for 40 years and never managed to afford. 200 feet of private lakefront. My phone buzzed with a text from Eddie Romano. Hospital project cleared OSHA review. Murphy says you're a miracle worker. Beer tonight? I typed back, rain check. Still setting up the new place. The settlement had been more generous than I'd expected. Bill understood that losing me completely would finish what Brandon had started. The $180,000 covered the past, and the consulting contract secured my future. At $18,000 a month, I was making more money working 20 hours a week than I'd ever made putting in 60-hour weeks as an employee. Brandon was still nominally CEO, but every major decision came through me first. The board had insisted on it after Patricia finally admitted that maybe bloodlines weren't the best qualification for running a construction company. My laptop chimed with an email from a potential new client, another family construction business dealing with succession problems, looking for someone who understood both the technical side and the family dynamics. I opened the email and started typing a response. Turned out there were a lot of companies out there that needed someone who understood the difference between being useful and being family, and I was finally charging appropriately for my time. The funny thing about foundation work is that nobody notices it until it's gone. You can ignore the guy who built your success for years, but when those support structures start failing, you find out real quick how much that work was actually worth. Bill Sullivan had spent 28 years taking my loyalty for granted. Now he was paying market rate for what he used to get for free. Angela Torres called that afternoon. "Mac, heard you're working independently now. Got a hospital project in Rochester that needs someone who knows the medical construction codes. Interested?" "Send me the details," I said, "but my rates have gone up significantly." She laughed. "Fair enough. You always were worth more than Sullivan was paying you." Worth more than they were paying me. That might be the most honest thing anyone had said about my situation in 28 years. Some people might call it revenge. I prefer to think of it as delayed invoicing. You know, I spent nearly 3 decades thinking loyalty was currency. I believed that if I worked hard, stayed late, and fixed everyone's mistakes, the company would eventually pay me back with respect and recognition. I was wrong. The mistake wasn't working hard. The mistake was giving away my value for free. I let them believe that my extraordinary effort was just standard procedure. I let them think the system ran on magic instead of my expertise. If you're the go-to person in your organization, the one who knows where the bodies are buried, the one who fixes what nobody else understands, you need to protect yourself. Document your worth. Don't just do the work, keep records of it. If you build systems, processes, or relationships that make the company run, make sure they know those come from you, not thin air. Read your contract. Know exactly what they own and what you own. If you create something outside your job description, that's your leverage. Don't hand it over just because someone with a fancy title asks for it, and never train your replacement without getting something in return. If they ask you to teach someone everything you know, that's the biggest red flag in the business world. It means they're preparing to move on without you. I didn't want to destroy Sullivan Brothers. I just wanted them to pay fair value for the foundation I'd built. When they refused, I simply stopped holding up the structure for free. Sometimes the only way to get respect is to show people what happens when you're not there.